Hi, everybody, and welcome to Out of the Gate, Daily Racing Form's weekend handicapping preview program. I'm Dan Illman. Thanks so much for watching. Here's what's coming up in this week's edition of Out of the Gate. Daily Racing Form handicappers Mike Beer, Matt Bernier, and I will take a look at 3 stakes races across the country. We'll take a look at the Mr. Prospector, the lone graded race on Saturday. That race from Gulfstream Park. The Queens County Stakes is a wide-open affair. That race at Aqueduct, and bonus coverage of the Blushing KD Stakes from the fairgrounds. Nicole Russo's got her eye on a couple of 2-year-old stakes races at the fairgrounds on Saturday, and Timeform US's best. Craig Milkowski and David Aragona, they're going to take a look at the Mr. Prospector Stakes and the Queens County Stakes, respectively. Plus JK's Play of the Day, best bets, horses to watch, and lots more. So let's break Out of the Gate. We begin Out of the Gate with our horse watch segment. Mike Beer, NYRA analyst, your horse to watch this week on the NYRA circuit blew a big lead last time. Usually you would call that a bad loss. Explain.
Yeah, short cakes. I don't know if maybe this is a bad loss. Here's what you have to keep in mind with short cakes in this race. You can put the replay up right now. This is her first start since June 3rd. Off of a long layup. She was very fresh early, and she came out of there running from the gate. There was an odds-on favorite in here. She went right after that horse, put that horse away, who will finish off the board. And she has a clear lead here. She looks home free, but she's going to get a little tired. You'll see her coming down to about the 16th pull, and you can just start to see her feel the effect. She's going to get tired. She's going to get run down by an in-form horse in this race who she just couldn't hold off at the end. But I thought, just as a starting off point, not a bad place to go here for Dave Canizzo. This is a mare who won 3 races at the Aqueduct Winter Meet last year, including a stakes race. And I think he brought her back thinking similar campaign this year. This might not be a bad place to start.
Matt, you and I thought that Chad Brown found a wonderful spot last Saturday for Electric Forest in the Rampart Stakes, but the trip just didn't work out.
Yeah, I kind of feel like it was one of those perfect trips until it wasn't a perfect trip. We can go back and take a look. This is as they're going to swing into the stretch for Electric Forest. She's down in the pocket, and it's taken a long time for Jose to try to find a spot for her to go. Unfortunately, now she's angled out into the clear, and we've only got about 1/8 of a mile to go at this point, and there's no way that she's going to be able to run down a horse like Tecalita. The rider at Tecalita did a very good job of hemming this filly in on the inside. I can understand anyone that looks at it and says it wasn't a great field. She's supposed to win no matter what. I'm going to be a little bit kinder and say first time against graded stakes company, first time in a little bit of a tough spot. She didn't break alertly. I still think quite highly of her. I think I would wheel her right back in whatever the next logical spot is down there, because I think she's just very talented.
I thought Copper Bullet was a top 2-year-old for trainer Steve Asmussen in 2017. A lot of trouble in the Bashford Manor Stakes. I'd argue he was the best horse that day. He returned with this effort in the Saratoga Special. Keep in mind it's 2017, and it was just a rock-solid performance by a good-looking son of More Than Ready who looked like he was on his way to bigger and better. Talk about the Breeders' Cup Juvenile, perhaps, but things didn't go right for Copper Bullet after this impressive performance. Shins flared up, your typical 2-year-old problems. Asmussen tried to rush him to get to the Kentucky Derby. The shins flared up again in February, and I think the Hall of Fame trainer gave this horse plenty of time, and it really manifested in this horse's return to the races. Off of a long layoff on November the 23rd, 2018, off an over a year layoff, this horse looked really good beating Wild Shadow. We're going to talk about a little bit later on in the Mr. Prospector Stakes. He earned a 96 Beyer speed figure that day, and Asmussen is showing a lot of confidence. He is planning on entering this horse in the Grade 1 Malibu on opening day at Santa Anita, and he's contracted Jose Ortiz to ride. I think Copper Bullet's back in good form, and he could be very dangerous in that Grade 1 at Santa Anita. Let's get to some handicapping. The Grade 3 Mr. Prospector is the feature at Gulfstream on Saturday. Let's throw up the field for Saturday's DRF Bets Race of the Day. It's the Grade 3 Mr. Prospector Stakes. $100,000 is the purse. We're going 7 furlongs, carded as race number 10. For expanded stakes previews of many of the major stakes races all weekend long and lots more, visit video.drf.com or the Daily Racing Form YouTube channel. Matt, the number 11 Coal Front, probably the horse to catch and beat in this spot. I expect him to go off favorite in here. I did not like his most recent effort. You're going for a better priced alternative.
Yeah, I'm with you on Cole Front. I just kind of look at him. I don't know how good he actually is at this point. He'd been gone for such a long time. That most recent start, I know he was out there and there were hot fractions, but he stopped like not a good thing. I kind of look at it and say I don't want any part of him here at a short price. Storm Advisory is just kind of a wacky idea for me in here. His most recent start, don't hold that against him. The Grade 1 Clark, I know that wasn't a great field, but 1 mile and an eighth, that's not what he wants. This is a softer group, and 2 starts back. If you can get an effort more similar to this one that we saw at Thistledown, I know it was at 6 furlongs. I think it's going to be beneficial. We can take a look as they swing into the stretch here. Look, 7/8 of a mile, the turn back, this is going to work to his advantage. And again, I know he's beating inferior company here, but I like the way that he does it. If you think he can get back to this effort, one that he did 3 starts back where you're in the 94 Byron and 114 time form rating, or those 7 furlong races over the summer at Churchill Downs, the Kelly's Landing or that N3X, either of those races, they're going to put him right there at the wire. He's 15-1 in the morning line. I think he's an interesting shot in a race that outside of Cole Front, I think it's wide open.
The Luch folks have done a great job with this old Classmaster Storm Advisory, and they've also done a sensational job getting Mike's top selection, Uno Mas Modelo, in absolutely raging form.
Yeah, I like both of these Luch horses in this race. Uno Mas Modelo is the one I wound up with on top in this race. Just the horse, as you mentioned, Dan, they claimed this horse or took over this horse and just gotten him really good. He's won 5 straight sprinting for these connections. He got a 102 Buyer 2 starts back when he won a stake at Churchill. And then he has this race on Claiming Crown Day at Churchill. You're going to see the start of the race. He's the #1 in here as a big favorite. He just totally blows the start. It almost feels like from here, he's not going to have any chance to win, and I think it's worth pointing out at this point that he's way off the pace. The horse that's running up the inside there to set the pace, that horse is still going to be there as we pick it up in the stretch. That horse finishes 2nd in this race, but you're just going to see Uno Mas Modelo turning into the stretch here. He's still got work to do to catch this field, but he's going to do every bit of that work. He's going to run this field down. A better than it looks performance for this horse, who's just been in really good form lately. Doesn't need to be that far off the pace. If he breaks, I think he'll get a better trip. I just think he's a very logical horse in this race.
And I believe he's going to drift up from those 2-to-1 morning line odds. My top selection is the #7 Wild Shot. Grade 1 placed as a 2-year-old, winner of the Pat Day Mile at 3, but somewhat inconsistent throughout his career. He missed most of his 4-year-old campaign due to injury, and Rusty Arnold brought him back in a pretty salty allowance race. My horse watch, Copper Bullet, ended up winning that race coming off of a long layoff of his own, but Wild Shot took a good shot at the sharp Copper Bullet turning into the stretch, only to be flicked away. Rusty Arnold excels second off the layoff. According to Formulator, over the past year, with older dirt horses going second off the bench, he's 10 for 23. In dirt sprints, when you narrow it down a bit, he's 5 for 10 with an $8.20 ROI. I think Wild Shot is going to be primed for his second start off the layoff, and I think he's going to sit off of what should be a solid and contentious pace. I'm not expecting the 10-1 on the morning line, but I think he's fair at 5 or 6-1. Nicole Russo's Pedigree Pick segment focuses on a couple of 2-year-old stakes races at the fairgrounds on Saturday. Craig Milkowski from Timeform US projects the pace for the Mr. Prospector. Let's go to those segments right now.
Hey everyone, Nicole Russo coming to you for Out of the Gate. Several stakes on the program Saturday at fairgrounds, including a pair of 6 furlong sprints for 2-year-olds, both featuring runners by top 10 freshman sires as we come to the end of the year. Let's first take a look at the field for the Sugar Bowl Stakes, and our pedigree analysis is going to zero in on Manny Wah. He's won 2 of 6 career starts, including a nice allowance win at Keeneland in the fall. Maybe getting some class relief here. He finished 7th at the Grade 3 Iroquois this fall and was 4th in the Street Sense, won of course by Improbable. From the first crop of champion Will Take Charge, who currently sits 5th on the freshman sire list by earnings. And while Will Take Charge's first crop was highly anticipated, it's not necessarily a surprise to me that he's not higher on the list, as I really expect his offspring to continue to develop with time and experience. His 3-year-olds could be quite strong. Now, Manny Watt is from a female family that has shown 2-year-old ability, but also one that I'd expect to relish more distance than this 6 furlongs. He's out of Battlefield Angel, a Grade 1 place juvenile, and a half-sibling to stakes-winning juvenile Lookin' at Lee, who finished 2nd in last year's Kentucky Derby. Now let's also take a quick peek at the sister event to the Sugar Bowl, the L'Atelier Memorial, and Longshot Kajawa represents leading freshman sire Cross Traffic, who, like Will Take Charge, is the son of the late Unbridled Song. That branch of the Unbridled line really seems poised to take off, as Unbridled Song's best sons really came late in his career. Now, Cross Traffic has 5 stakes horses out there from his first crop, of course, including Jaywalk, who propelled him to the top of the freshman list with her victory in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies, Kajawa herself, a half-sister to stakes-winning juvenile Bear Holiday. Thanks for tuning in this week on Out of the Gate, and now let's send you over for more weekend analysis with Craig and the Timeform US Pace Projector.
Hi, this is Craig Mulkowski at Timeform US for this week's edition of Out of the Gate. Today I'm going to look at the Mr. Prospector Stakes being run as the 10th race at Gulfstream Park on Saturday. And using our race finder, it looks like that's the only graded stakes being run in North America this week. So kind of drew me to it, and luckily for me, it did have a flag. I like to focus on the pace projector in this segment. And let's start by looking at the race preview where we'll see that flag. And you can see a full field of 11 was entered in this. It's a 7-furlong dirt sprint for older males, actually 3 years old and up. This time of year, it's basically the same thing. And you can see the pace projector, a little mini graphic on the right. You can see it has a red flag, which is going to indicate that we expect a hot pace in this race. And I went ahead and highlighted some of the reasons why, basically the horses that are leading to that designation. You can see we have 2 designated as leaders. That's horses who pretty much want the lead at all costs if they can get it. That would be number 6 Heartwood and number 11 Cold Front. We also have the 2 Croy is listed as a speed horse. That's a horse that likes to be right up there as well, or just off at the worst. And then we even have a couple trackers in this field, the numbers 9 and 10, Conquest Big E and Bella Tapisserie. And those are horses that like to lay just a length or so, maybe 2 off, and they usually make their move on the turn sooner rather than later. Let's focus in and take a closer look at the pace projector here. And you can see that despite the fast pace, we actually think the 11's fast enough to clear here. That's Cold Front, trained by Todd Pletcher. We think he can get to the front from the outside post. We're going to look at him in a little more detail next. But one thing I do like is drawing that 11 post with the long chute, 7 furlongs. Is still a 1-turn race at Gulfstream. And so he's got plenty of time to get the position that he wants and hopefully get over to the inside before that turn comes up. And now here is Cold Front. You can see he had a very promising start to his career. He won quite a few races. He won the Grade 2 Amsterdam at Saratoga. And then he was part of just a really fast speed. He wasn't part of the duel, but a really fast-paced race in the Grade 1 Jerkins at Saratoga. And he rebounded nicely in the Gallant Bob, which is a Grade 3 at Parks, where he was able to win wire to wire. But from there, something clearly went amiss. You can see he had a layoff. He didn't run for over a year, 400 and some odd days, it says there. And so something clearly went wrong, but they brought him back to the races. And though that race doesn't look very good, he was beaten 15 lengths in a Grade 3 at Aqueduct. A look at the pace figures show he was just blazing early. We got him highlighted in red. You can see it was a 153 to the open quarter. He got challenged at the half mile before giving way. But all in all, it was a really nice effort for coming off of such a long layoff. And it was reflected in that 122 Timeform US speed figure that you see. Definitely got some pace boost in there for setting that fast pace. And I think despite what our pace projector says, I think this horse is a major contender in here. I think he's going to clear early. I expect better second time out. So a Cold Front is definitely one I'll be using. Next, I want to look at number 6 Heartwood. He's the horse that was the other leader on that preview page, and he is shown as second in the pace projector. And while he is a quick horse, I don't think he's on the same level as Cold Front. You can look at his fractions. His last 5 races, you don't see any red where he's gone too fast or anything like that. You even see some blue where he didn't make the lead. So while this horse does like to be up near the front, I just don't think it's the same level of speed as Cold Front, which is part of why I'm leaning towards that one as the main contender. Since it is predicted to be a hot pace, I do want to look at a couple of the closers in here. And the closers we have are number 8, Uno Mas Modelo, who's going to be the race favorite. But first I want to look at the one with the top Timeform US late pace rating, and that's number 1, Sweet on the Ladies. You can see I've highlighted he has a 105 for that late pace. And he's 20-1 on the morning line, but he's actually a horse I'm going to use as a contender in here. I think he's had a few things against him last time. You can see I highlighted his last 2 dirt races. He's had blue fractions, and there's a horse that likes to come from well off the pace. That's not what you want to see. There just wasn't much pace in front of him. And despite that, he was still making up some ground late. He got up to be 3rd and 4th and enlisted in the Grade 3 stake. He ran solid, and I mean, I'm not going to say he's a strong contender and a horse I love, but he's definitely one that I'm going to have on the tickets. I'm going to play in some exactas with Cold Front, and I might even throw a few dollars on him to win at the expected big price. The other closer I mentioned was the race morning line favorite, Uno Mas Modelo. And he was rated 2nd on the Timeform US late pace ratings, but he's one of the ones I'm mainly interested in playing this race for because I just don't think he's that good. I think he's not a very good favorite. His speed figures are a little less than some of the others in here, including Cold Front. You can see even in his best efforts, he runs in the high teens. And his last 2 trips have just been dream trips. Last time out, he got a really hot pace. He was able to sit well off of it and got up late, but he only got a 109 for that victory. 2 back in the slop at Churchill. It was actually a slow pace, and while he did show some versatility, he was right up on the lead, just off of it going into the turn. Opened up and won easy. But even that day, he only ran a 116. So, I mean, while it wouldn't shock me if he wins this race, he's one I'm not, he's kind of a lukewarm favorite in my opinion, and one I'm willing to take a stand against. So for this race, I'm going to lean on Cold Front. He's going to be my win bet if he's anywhere near that morning line of 7-2 that he is. And I'm going to play him with in some exactas with Sweet on the Ladies #1, and I'll also play a little win bet on that one if anywhere near the 20-1 morning line.
DRF Sports Forum Digital Edition, your ultimate weekly betting guide. Published by Daily Racing Form, DRF Sports Forum delivers all of the analysis and insight you need for every NFL game and more than 40 college football matchups. Beat the spread with powerful trends and sharp angles. Tap into best bets, expert picks, parlay winners, and more. All for just $4.99 per issue. Get this week's edition free. Visit drf.com/sportsforum. Enter code DRF Sports.
Are you a horse player looking to raise your game? For over 120 years, expert handicappers have relied on Daily Racing Form as their must-have source for news and data, featuring exclusive buyer speed figures, Timeform US pace figures, and integrated replays. DRF Formulator is the most powerful handicapping tool on the market today. Use what the pros use. Go to drf.com/formulator and enter code DRFTV to get your first card free. drf.com. Raise your game.
Welcome back to Out of the Gate. Let's throw up the field for the feature race at the Big A on Saturday. It's the $125,000 Queens County, going 9 furlongs on the dirt, carded as race number 8. For expanded stakes previews of many of the major stakes races this weekend, head on over to video.drf.com or the Daily Racing Form YouTube channel. We cover every horse in depth. This is a very competitive race, Matt. I can make a case for them all. Morning line favorite down towards the rail, the #1 name changer, a graded stakes winner already at this distance.
Yeah, and really, I think you got to make a determination here with this horse. Let's take a look at his most recent race, because if he runs this one, the Pennsylvania Derby Champion Stakes, I don't think he has any real edge on this field, and to be taking a short price on him at 3 or 2-1 or 7-2, that's just not very appetizing to me. But you would have mentioned that graded stakes win at this distance 2 starts back in the Monmouth Cup. That day, he earned a 102 buyer and a 128 raw time form rating. If you believe he's going to run back to that race, to me, he's strictly the horse to beat. The problem is that is the only time in his career he's ever run anything close to that. Otherwise, he's a solid horse like you just saw right there that I don't think has any real edge on this field.
I kind of agree with you. I don't really want to take a short price on him, but he was in against a real hot horse last time. That Aztec Census won something like 8 in a row and 10 out of his last 11. Mike, you've always been a big fan of Small Bear. It seems turf or dirt, he's solid. You think he's a little dirtied up coming into Saturday's Queens County?
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see what he can do. And I think he is a little dirtied up. He's 0 for 8 this year, so you're talking about a horse who hasn't won a race in quite a while. But I think he's come back this year as a 4-year-old, every bit as good as he was last year when he had a pretty solid campaign. And I do think he's fine at this kind of a distance. So I like that about him as well. He's only made 3 starts on the main track so far this year. We're going to put up the replay of his last one, a stakes race at Laurel. The track is listed good. He's down on the rail the entire way in the spot. You can see everybody else is sort of staying off the inside. he stayed down there the entire way. He's got to look at it here. It feels like he's got a shot. He just can't quite get up at the end of the day. But I think all in all, this race was an okay performance. His other 2 dirt starts this year, I also feel like he ran really well in both of those races. He ran into the aforementioned Aztec Sense in his first dirt start, just couldn't get to him. And then they brought him to Belmont, cut him back to a 1-turn mile on a day when speed was dominant. He actually ran a very good second that day, out finishing Exalting, who's also in this field. I think there's a way to look at Small Bear. I think he's better than he looks. He'll get the distance, will be a price. I'm going to take a shot with him in this race.
Matt, Todd Pletcher has 2 in here. We might have the other Pletcher because I have a feeling that the number 4 Bal Harbour is going to be slightly better odds than the number 3 Bonus Points come post time.
And I think a lot of people are going to go back to his most recent start, which we'll take a look at here. This is an off-the-turf Gio Stakes 3-horse field on a day where speed did very well according to Timeform US on the main track. And you see the color-coded fractions. They walked out there on the front end. He took the field gate to wire. I think a lot of people will look at that and say, oh, reasons to play against him. Maybe he's not going to have everything go his way. But my sort of argument going the other way would be 2 starts back. His first start off of a long layoff, he came back and he came from well off the pace down at Keeneland, and I thought he ran quite well that day. That race as a whole has come back solid. Keep in mind, they gelded him over the summer, so clearly you've got a different animal coming out this time around. And from a buyer standpoint, I wonder if those figs are a little bit on the light side. I think he might be slightly faster than that. And you brought it up, Dan, just the price. I think he's going to be a little bit more of an appetizing number, and I think he's got a big chance.
I agree with you. I'm going to go with Bal Harbour as well for many of the reasons that you mentioned. He was always a solid horse as a 2-year-old. He won a couple of stakes races for Todd. When they put him in the right spot, he missed most of the spring and summer. And again, I think the patience has paid off. Gelding process over the summer. He's come back with a couple of wins. You mentioned that race 2 starts back. Not only did he beat Title Ready, who came back to run second in the Discovery with a 92 buyer, but he also beat a couple of next out winners. One of them, Lone Rock, has now won 2 in a row, including a stakes race at Remington last week. He can do it from on the lead. He won't be on the lead. He can come from off the pace. I still think there's a little upside here for Bal Harbour, and I'm hoping he's going to be the right price. We'll move from New York to New Orleans and take a look at the Blushing KD Stakes coming up next. Let's put up the field for the Blushing KD Stakes, carded as race number 8 at the fairgrounds on Saturday. This race for fillies and mares at the about distance of 1 1/16, $75,000 is the purse. For expanded stakes previews of many of the major stakes races all weekend long, visit video.drf.com or the Daily Racing Form YouTube channel. Mike, the number 2, I'm Betty G, is known for her speed, but last time out, there was a speedster named Fahan Moura in the race, and I'm Betty G was denied the lead. Do you think she gets to the frontier? And if she does she make this field pay?
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what she can do in here, because she is clearly a horse when you start picking apart her PPs. If she doesn't make the front in her races, she's just not going to be effective. She's won 5 times. Every one of those wins in wire-to-wire fashion. When she doesn't get to the front, she doesn't win. We're going to look at a win for her most recently, 3 starts back at Ellis Park. She did get to the lead this day. She was a little bit better than these horses, a 9-5 favorite, and she is going to stay clear through this stretch. This is a nice performance. This is what she can do when she's at her best and when she has things her own way. But there's other speed in this race, Dan, and you know what? It's also, once you get beyond a mile with this horse, I think that's when you really start to worry with her. Anything past a mile, she starts to get a little bit tired at the end of her races, and this is a very long stretch at the fairgrounds. I think there's a lot working against her in this race.
I'm Betty G finished just ahead of your top selection in this race, Matt, Beau Recall, when they most recently met in that Fahan Moura race, but there should be pace this time around, and Beau Recall would really benefit from more pace.
Yeah, she would appreciate as much pace as possible in here. She's also making her first start for Brad Cox, and I think that could be a giant difference maker. We're going to take a look at her run 2 starts back in the Rodeo Drive. This was against a pretty salty group. You see Vasilika in there. You see Paved, Cambodia, those types. She's going to come. You see her between horses splitting right now. I don't think the 1 1/4 miles is necessarily what she wants at this point. Early on, I thought she would adore 1 1/4 miles, and that just didn't pan out. Look, she hasn't taken a giant step forward from early on in her 3-year-old form to where she is now, but I do think with the barn change, with the projected pace signed on in this race, I think she's going to come with a late run. I like her in here.
Mike, we've talked about a speed, we've talked about a closer, now we're going to talk about a filly that can do it either way. take these chains.
Yeah, I think you'll see her do it from off the pace this time. Her most recent start, which came off of a very long layoff at Churchill Downs, she was also off a trainer change to Brad Cox there. They just put her right on the front. She wired that field. I thought she looked good doing it. She won't be able to wire this field, but the good news is she doesn't have to. Let's go back to last April. We're going pretty far back here at Belmont Park. This is when she was in Chad Brown's barn. You see her, she sat off the pace this time. She comes right up after the leaders here, rolls right by them in the stretch. This is the easiest kind of win for this filly. She will be in hand under the wire. She started out her career like she was going to be really good, Dan. They tried her in a stakes race last summer at Belmont Park. Something went wrong in that race. She didn't run for almost a year and a half after that. But I thought she came back and looked really good off the layoff, and I think she'll get the right trip in this race.
I agree that Take These Chains is the horse to beat. I'm with Matt, however. I'm going to go with Beau Recall, who's just been sent off at gigantic prices against tough graded stakes competition in Southern California in her most recent races. I think the class relief and the addition of pace in this spot is really going to help out Beau Recall, and we saw how Cox was able to get Take These Chains to perform first off the trainer switch. Perhaps he'll do the same with Beau Recall. She's 9-2 on the morning line, and considering her back class, I believe she is a fair fit at that price. JK's got a multiple race play of the day for you, and then David Aragona from Timeform US takes a look at the Queens County on his Timeform US Spotlight.
Hey everybody, welcome to JK's Play of the Day. Typically we're looking at exactas and doubles, pick threes and pick fours. I like one horse, and I like that horse a lot on Saturday at Gulfstream. I looked at the surrounding races, didn't have a strong opinion. I thought we would just limit this thing to a win bet. And the horse that I'm going to use in a win bet, 7-2 on the morning line, the 11 horse in race 10, the grade 3 Mr. Prospector, Cold Front for Todd Pletcher. Horse obviously ran really well in the 3-year-old stakes races earlier this year. Last year in 2017, winning the Amsterdam up at Saratoga. Running a pretty good race in the Jerkins, finishing 5th, beating 4 lengths. Had the long break, 405 days off, came back at Aqueduct, ran in a race and ran into No Dozing, who was absolutely a freak that day. Ran an extremely fast early Timeform US pace figures, 153, 155, 149, going 7 off of a 400-day layoff. I'd expect that horse to be much tighter right here. I've seen some workout videos for the horse. Obviously, check out the DRF Clocker report to confirm that he is working well. He's drawn outside. He should get that perfect Johnny V. Todd Pletcher trip on the outside going 7. Uno Mas Modelo is the 2-1 morning line favorite. Should take a little bit of money, but I prefer Cold Front drawn to the outside. The 11, 7-2. Take all the 7-2 you can get. Probably going to get a little bit lower than that. I would think 5-2, 3-1 would be the final price there. Hook him up in some of your exotic bets late in the card. But my play of the day is the 11 Cold Front. Thanks. See you next week.
Hi everyone, I'm David Aragona for this week's Timeform US Spotlight. We're going to take a look at the 8th race on Saturday at Aqueduct. It's the Queens County going 9 furlongs on the main track for older horses. Pretty interesting field of 10 runners, horses coming in from out of town, different directions, pretty wide open race. The number 1 horse, Name Changer, is probably going to be the favorite, but it's a lukewarm favorite because there are many horses that can win this race. And we'll start by taking a look at the Timeform US pace projector up in the right-hand corner of the screen. You see that favors horses on under the lead indication with the blue bar. There just isn't a whole lot of speed in this race, so I think that's going to make the couple of horses that do have tactical speed very dangerous. One of those is the number 2 Adulator, who's one of the longer prices in this race, but I think the number 10 horse, Exulting, is a horse that you have to take very seriously based on this pace projector because he does have plenty of speed. The 10 post is difficult for horses going 1 mile and 1/8 on the main track because they really do have to break well and get over, but I think that this likely pace scenario does make him dangerous in this race. If we take a look at his recent past performances, he makes a lot of sense in here because he's run a string of Timeform US speed figures that make him, actually, let's start by taking a look at Name Changer instead. He's the favorite in this race. If he runs back to his Monmouth race 2 back, I think he's going to be very tough to beat in this spot. He defeated Zanotti, who's a hard-knocking horse that runs out of town a lot. Paige McKenney, another horse who's always competitive in these sorts of races, was a distant 3rd that day. The problem with Name Changer is that I don't really know where that race came from because while he's always hinted at having real ability, he had never kind of attained that level where he seemed like a graded stakes horse. That 123 Timeform US speed figure is a bit of an outlier looking through his past performances. He had 2 months off after that. He came back last time at Parks. Just kind of ran a lackluster race. I didn't love the effort. He got beaten by Zanotti, who turned the tables on him that day, was no match for Aztec Sense, who's just been on a roll for Jorge Navarro. And now he's had some time off again since that race. I think the mile and an eighth does work for Name Changer. He's got a perfect post position down inside for a horse that has tactical speed like him. I just don't fully trust him to come back to that race 2 back. And if he's the favorite in this race, I want to look elsewhere, though I will use him. The number 10 horse, Exulting, who I was just mentioning before, is one of the speeds in this race. He's a horse that I think you have to use because of his speed. But he's another one that I don't fully trust because if you watch his races, he's got this tendency to lug in the stretch, and it really has been detrimental in quite a few of his performances. Going 4 back at Saratoga, he would have won that race by like 6 lengths or so, but he just lost focus at the end of that race, drifted down to the rail, almost hit the rail. It really cost himself some position towards the end. He came back and lost to today's rival Small Bear 3 back at Belmont. 2 back, he won that race at Belmont, but it was an off-the-turf race, going a mile. He kind of got to control things up front, and I thought he really had everything. He had the best of it that day. And then last time, I didn't like that effort. I've always thought that a mile and an eighth is a bit far for him. He didn't handle the distance. He did break a little bit slowly, but he got up into a perfect position and just couldn't see out the 9 furlongs that day. He also got to lugging in towards the end of that race, was bumping into the horse inside of him. Kieran McLaughlin does put blinkers on this time to try to correct that issue, but he's had these, these tendencies to underperform when, he's in tougher spots, and I just don't fully trust him if he's going to be a short price in this race, though he's another one that I will use defensively. 2 horses that I think you really have to take a look at that'll be slightly better prices, one of which is Small Bear, the number 8 horse. I know he doesn't win that often, but he's just run really solid speed figures in a number of his recent dirt races. They focused on turf for the majority of the past couple seasons, but he's just as good on the dirt. A mile and an eighth is the perfect distance for him. And last time out at Laurel, I just didn't think he got the right trip. He didn't have any real trouble, but he was just kind of stuck down inside. That's often not where you want to be at Laurel. And they only got him off the rail in the last 16th of a mile, and he was coming on well that day behind Unbridled Juan, who's in very good form. And off that performance, I think Small Bear is a major contender in this race. You just have to go 3 back to see that 1:19 time form US speed figure when he finished ahead of Exulting. That makes him good enough to beat this field. And then the horse that I'm going to take a shot with at a big price is the number 5 Backside of the Moon. I've always been a fan of this horse, and I know he's a bit of a stretch in this race, but he does have races that make him competitive here. I'm not going to put too much stock in that race 2 back when he disappointed at Belmont because he was coming off the layoff that day. Second off the layoff last time, he took a big step forward behind Exulting, closing into a pace that never really developed. You see that blue color-coded time formulas pace figure for the first quarter. I think he was up against it from the pace situation that day. He can take a step forward off that 1:12 time formula speed figure. I like him stretching out to the mile and an eighth. I've always thought that's his best distance, and he's a horse that just seems to come alive in the winter at Aqueduct. That's where he does his best running. Leo O'Brien is putting blinkers back on today, and I hope that gets him a little bit more into the race early, because with not a lot of pace in this race, he can utilize his stalking running style to good effect. So I'm taking a shot with Backside of the Moon, 15-1 on the morning line, hoping to get somewhere near that price, using him primarily with Small Bear as well as Exulting and the likely favorite Name Changer. So that's the Queens County race 8 at Aqueduct on Saturday. Now let's send it back to the studio.
Time for our best bet segment here on Out of the Gate. Mike Beer, Naira analyst. You're going down to Gulfstream Park, but I will forgive you because this is a former Out of the Gate horse watch for you.
Yeah, this is all credit to you, Ilman. Zenner, who you pointed out to me, was back in at Gulfstream on Saturday. It'll be interesting to see what he does here. He's a very talented horse, obviously. Could have easily gone 5 for 5 on the turf in 2017. He missed a long time. I felt like when he came back off of a year-long layoff at Saratoga, he ran deceptively well in that race. Wide trip in a race that collapsed, caught yielding ground off that long layoff too. I think he ran a lot better than it looks. Then he came back with this performance down at Belmont Park, and this just didn't work out for him. I think he was best this day. You can see him riding in behind the leaders all the way down past mid-stretch. You just can't get him out to the clear. I feel like Joe Lozaro thought he was going to get a split there. He didn't get it. He has to switch out behind the eventual winner right there, and he's going to start making ground on this horse right now, but he's going to come up just short at the end. I think he ran well here. I think it shows that Zenner can still run. Kieran's got him entered in a very tough allowance race at Gulfstream, race number 9 on Saturday. But I think he fits well on there, and I think his good race can win it. Matt, you're staying on the grass, but at Tampa Bay Downs.
Well, the horse that I like is coming from a grass race. They're actually going over to the main track, and it sounds like as of right now, there might be 1.5 feet of rain coming down in Tampa. So keep an eye on that. But the second race on Saturday, it's a non-winners of 2 lifetime. The horse down on the inside is the number 1, Secret Lifestyle. Now, 2 starts back, I had a trip note. There was an unfortunate circumstance where a horse had to be eased and pulled up. This horse ended up being spun about 15 wide and still came out with a nice run. I was licking my chops waiting to see this one back on the dirt. They come back and run her in this spot here. We're going to take a look. This is a 2-turn turf race, and really, in the grand scheme of things, it was a perfect trip. This horse tipped out into the clear, and you can see right now it's actually put about a length on the field. Just going to get run down in the shadow of the wire, but finishes almost 4 lengths clear of everyone else. I find it a little bit peculiar that they're going to go back to the dirt with this horse after running so well on the grass, but at the same time, this is not a spectacular group. And I genuinely believe if this horse runs the race that you're seeing right there on the grass, if you can transition that to the main track, I think this horse gets through this condition on Saturday at 5-1 in the morning line.
I'm going to go to Laurel, race number 5, number 4. This is General Downs. And General Downs has been a little bit of a disappointment throughout his career. Lots of seconds from 16 lifetime starts. He's burned a lot of money. But I thought he showed a little bit of potential last time out, his first start with blinkers. We'll go back to that race at Laurel, and he is so wide turning into the stretch that he is completely out of the screen. Timeform US had this pace color-coded blue. It was a slow pace. General Downs swung 6 wide, 7 path into the lane and just couldn't run these horses down. And these are some promising horses. Tis He the One has now won 3 in a row. He's the winner of this race. He came out of this race to win a 3X with an 86 buyer. The 3rd place finisher came back to win a 2X with an 81 buyer. This has been a live race. I think this horse was compromised by severe ground loss, and I'm hoping, just hoping, he can get a little bit of a better trip this time around. That's General Downs for West Point Thoroughbreds. Laurel, race number 5, number 4. I think 3-1 is a fair price on the tote. We thank you so much for watching Out of the Gate, and we urge you to follow all of DRF TV's latest offerings on social media. Follow on Twitter at DRF Video, and for the latest news and notes from America's Turf Authority Daily Racing Form, follow on Twitter at DRF Inside Post. That's it for this week. Best of luck when your horses break at the gate.